Hey everyone, welcome back for another video. In just a sec here, we're going to play the audio from my talk with Lionheart, the largest Total War player in the world. So excited to have him here on the channel. It was a ton of fun, easily the best hour and a half of my week, if not month. So, hope you guys enjoy, and here we go. So, Lionheart, welcome to the channel. Thanks again so absolutely much for being willing to do this. It's awesome to have the biggest Total War player in the world here. Talk about some Warhammer stuff. So
thanks for having me.
Let's start with the first question, the one that I'm sure people who watch your channel are aware of, but I have to know for myself. Which legendary lord do you think you like the most so far, and which race do you think you're going to start on your first playthrough?
This is the toughest question, to be fair. I was looking through these questions when you sent them through the other day, and I was going, I had to ask that one because I'm not even sure. I keep changing my mind every time there's new information released. I keep going, actually no, I'll play with them. Well, no, I'll play as this character, or that one looks really cool. And I kind of want to maybe hold off until I just see everything that they're willing to kind of reveal. Obviously, we're still waiting for vampire count stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess on the side of that, I've always liked dwarfs. Dwarfs kind of just generically across most fantasy genres are pretty awesome. So I've got to admit, Ungrim, Iron Fist, the Slayer King, he looks freaking
Ungrim
badass.
is a solid pick, yeah.
He's got a massive mohawk going through there. It literally looks insane. So I'll probably say him and the dwarves. I mean, let's play wise, who I'm going to play with first. It'll probably be like a faction vote, but I'm sure. I guess having a small number of factions to choose from at launch maybe helps the fact that I'll probably get to play as all of them eventually.
Yep.
So I'll definitely get around them all, but yeah, probably dwarves. I am actually. I mean, the more that Izzy keeps going on and on about them, the more I want to play vampire count as well. So
Izzy definitely loves to talk about vampire counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to admit, even especially recently, I was solid on playing dwarves, but then they released, that corruption idea for the vampire counts and the Warriors of Chaos. It's like it's gonna be hard not to do that Kolek run first.
It does. Yeah, it does look good. Yeah. That's gonna be a lot of trouble for you if you've got both those vampiric corruption and chaos corruption both going on. That's gonna be tough.
Yeah, especially it looked like the chaos corruption was just a meter that builds up across the game, because during the Greenskin trailer, I think most of the Badlands at the very far south, which should be the safest, I think, were at 9% chaos corruption.
Yeah.
So it looks like as the game drags on that it's going to become much more of a threat.
Yeah, I would assume that's potentially tied into their kind of. I think they've mentioned this kind of sort of mechanic along the lines of when either the meter gets full or when the corruption gets too high, then you'll be invaded with huge hordes of chaos.
Right, and it's going to be interesting to see how the corruption mechanic works out. Because I mean, if it's like the opening, the first trailer we saw for this game, showed that Wizard of the Lore of Light getting corrupted. Which, I mean, if you have agents that suddenly decide they're gonna turn for chaos, that could be nasty.
I always assumed actually that I kind of didn't actually expect chaos to be playable at launch. I kind of expected it either as DLC or as in one of the standalone kind of expansions that they're also working on, one of the future titles.
Right.
But I also kind of thought that maybe they wouldn't. To a degree, be directly playable, and it would be through the corruption mechanic that units would either rebel or be turned into something completely different through the corrupting power of chaos. So quite interested to see how that affects you as it builds up. Will it be kind of different tiers? So at like 25%, your units start breaking away and getting corrupted, and then 50% more of them do that, and you start losing money or something like that as well, and the land starts turning, or be interesting to see at kind of what stage of corruption it really starts, how it changes.
Right, yeah, and there seems to be suggestion that it can get pretty ugly too. I mean, in the trailer we get a greater demon that shows up, so I wonder if maybe if your corruption gets too high if you spawn something scary like that, because That'd be that'd be an ugly thing to have suddenly pop up, and goodness knows what kind of. It's the Empire seems like it could be hard potentially late game if you've got stuff like rebellions going on and vampiric corruption and chaos corruption all happening at once.
Yeah.
But so while we're kind of talking about that, just thinking about the new dwarf info I saw. How do you feel so far about the army mechanics that we've gotten to see for like the campaign map? For like the WA mechanic for our greenskins, or just today, or yes, today they released the dwarf roster that also mentioned that the dwarves, for instance, will have a campaign mechanic where they're immune to rebellions.
Yeah, I mean, it looks, again, all of it's kind of setting the initial launch factions apart with different kind of different play styles and different challenges for each one. I really like the WAR meter. It seems like a really good way of having that build up, and you've got to constantly keep the momentum going. Otherwise, it's very similar to integrity, and in fact, it looks pretty similar. I'm sure that was the building block for the WAR mechanic. I'm actually quite interested to see how well or not the AI controlled WAR armies are.
Right, that's been kind of a talking point for a lot of people about seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily bummed that they're AI controlled, just because one would assume that if you've built up 10 full stack armies and you're charging forward and you get the WAR meter up on all of them, that's then suddenly 20. And that's going to be crazy to control.
Okay, cool.
Because I assume it's the WAR meter per army.
Right.
So you can, that, and they're trying to simulate how do we simulate the greenskin hordes in this game, and how do we kind of simulate the different warring tribes almost coming together to fight for a unified cause if there's good reason for it, but also how do we make it so that that will fall apart if the war effort isn't kept going and if the momentum isn't built up. So
right, and I guess I can see the balance of having it being AI controlled so that a player isn't just generating armies and sending them off in a new direction. But
yeah,
it also could be bad, if you suddenly if you were relying on those armies to hold something, but then your main army suddenly loses a fight, and then all those armies just vanish or rebel or whatever the heck it is they do when your WA meter drops.
Yeah, I think that's going to be that's the challenge with the greenskins. You can have if your momentum gets stopped, then the greenskins are in real trouble because they rely on that momentum. And that kind of successful string of victories and constant battles to keep them going. And if you can deny them that, then they'll really quickly lose that momentum. So I think it will be a good mechanic. I hope that the AI for the hordes is pretty reasonable. I hope it's better than the AI controlled armies of Medieval 2 Kingdoms.
Yeah,
because while I liked that feature that they brought in there, because that's kind of the first time that we ever had, that's the first time we had 40v40, or the potential for that, because you could bring in your second army while you're controlling yours, and that was the way that they kind of, I don't know if that's the way that they got around some of the performance kind of impact because the AI was looking after it. But I mean the controls of them were so crap. I mean, you couldn't really specifically give them you couldn't tell them to form up over here. You had to move them all as a lump, and I assume you probably won't be able to pick off 2 of their archers from that army, go over there, 2 from there, because then you'll be controlling it like you would your main force. But I hope there's maybe a few more options and it's a bit more intelligent about how it sets up.
right.
Did look promising with the options. I think it looked like there were 3 options, but only the first one was viewable on the campaign map walkthrough, which was an attack option for that AI horde.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like there's some minimal control.
Yeah, I think maybe there's surely. I mean, off the top of my head, I would have thought attack, defend, and potentially raid, or something like that would be, the basic ones there. And I assume if you don't have them selected on any of those, they'll just, as CA said in their video, they'll just follow you or shadow you around the map as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they'll be able to come in on the fight to sort of get around because I think from what we've seen so far, it's looking like 20 is going to be the army stack limit.
Yeah, it's disappointing that.
Which I'm not sure if that's set in stone yet, or if they're doing what they can, and we'll just see what happens by release.
Yeah.
But 20 is what they're going with for the moment.
I'd read conflicting things about whether different things on Reddit and other forum posts and things like that, and that either they might be considering changing it to 40 or not, or it just kind of seems like a weird step backwards when we've had it around for quite a while now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't mind the option to do it, especially when I'm playing undead or greenskins, because I would like the biggest army that I can possibly.
Yeah, surely
get.
with those you want that horde feeling, don't you? So I mean, yeah, I don't see the point of what having it as an option as it is now. I mean, you're not forced to fight 40v40 stat battles because you just have that control large army option, which you uncheck or check, and sometimes it's actually strategically better to uncheck it and just fight 20v20 and then allow your reinforcements to come in, because you're able to slow the enemy down a bit. I can only assume that maybe they're struggling with performance at this point. Potentially is why they'd want to limit it down. But,
well, I guess it's possible that it could be that. I mean, there's a lot going on.
there is a lot going on. Yet there have been other articles. One I always come back to in all my videos is that there was one of the developers was saying that they had found a way to increase unit sizes without any impact on performance through the application of new technologies that are developing or have been developed recently. And for me, that screams DirectX 12 integration.
Right.
Allowing the GPU to handle more rendering and things like that. But
I bet the 20 stack versus 40 stack will be a big question when the developer live stream goes off later this week. So hopefully they'll be willing to answer it. They might not be ready for that, but hopefully they are.
I hope so.
Okay, so looking at some of the stuff going on in actual battles, so they have added a lot of stuff to this game. And the last Total War game I played, which I played quite extensively, was Shogun 2, which to my understanding was a nice, safe one to play lots. And that and a few new features that came along afterwards might have prepared players for what's coming. Like if we start with monsters, for instance, I heard that the elephants were a bit of a similar thought, though of course the elephants were probably not nearly as large or dramatic as the things that we see coming, like giants and wyverns and Arachnarok spiders and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Seeing for your battles, I'm assuming you like monsters. Everyone likes monsters that I've met so far.
Yeah. I like the fancy elements, certainly.
How do you think strategy is going to develop around these weird sort of single unit units? Single model units, which to my understanding have not been a huge presence in Total War before. Normally you'd have like a group of 20, 30 plus people representing a single stack, and now we've got one model, though he's more than capable of stomping his way around the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be... I mean, certainly from it's something they haven't really talked about at all. Certainly from a multiplayer perspective, balancing-wise on those and how that will make you form up strategies on whether you actually bring them or not, whether they're worth it or not, is going to be quite interesting. I mean, my kind of hands-on experience with some of the monsters available to the Warhammer world through the Ambush at the Thundering Falls demo that I've managed to play a few times. You have giants and some trolls come in through that battle as reinforcements, and the most effective way is normally just throwing your slayers at them because they've got a bonus versus large units and monsters. So I think it will definitely sure, you've got the rock paper scissors kind of in there, but you've also got slayers versus monsters, and they're adding in a few different types that you're going to have to combat. But I would assume that there will be very specific units which will, like the slayers, that will do well against them, and if not, then it's going to be looking at trying to pin those creatures down and maybe hit them with artillery or lots of ranged units, or if you've got some magic to potentially cast that on them.
Right.
I think it will certainly possibly cause you to break apart your formations a bit more. If you can suddenly be charged by these huge giants, and if they can get into a big solid group of you, that's that's exactly where they want to be. They want to be right in the middle of your formation and disrupting it. So you might find yourself splitting your armies a bit more. I think it almost on a case by case sort of scenario by scenario situation, really. But I would like to think that it might make you move a bit more, rather than just kind of moving to your position, form up your nice formation, and then kind of sit there static and then work around the enemy that way. I think you might have to be a bit more on the move.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's going to be some players that'll be like, "What do you mean? I'm always on the move with my formation tactics," and that's good because you may survive longer.
Right.
But I play quite a. I actually, I'm one of those guys that'll be like, "I've got to get my formation lines perfectly the same length, OCD."
Well, dwarves may be a very solid pick for you then, because they don't look like they want to move. They can get away with it.
No, yeah, actually, that was something kind of cool to see. There was radically different unit movement speeds playing as the dwarves at the Thundering Falls battle, and just seeing the general pace of the greenskins. The dwarves are so slow.
Yeah, and those spider riders. Oh, those things are fast.
Crazy. Could not, and it wasn't a case of like some Total Wars where you just have to turn a little bit earlier. You physically couldn't turn quickly enough to get them. They would flank you. So it's really going to be. Especially if you can identify, you're coming up against guys. I guess in multiplayer as well, you'll be like, all right, that guy's playing dwarves. I want my light cavalry troops basically to flank that guy because they can pull his formation apart, and then we can strike in with whatever else we've got, because it will pull them out of formation, and they won't be able to. It's not that they won't be able to react quickly enough. The player, even if the player reacts quickly enough, the units just won't be able to move fast enough. Right. So you're going to get caught out. So I think it's going to make you whether to move or not as the dwarves is going to be very interesting. Kind of almost counter to what I've just said about you'll need to move more. With the dwarves, you may well need to do that, but you actually just can't. At least in the builds that I've played, unless they change that dramatically.
Yeah, they've certainly held true to their statement a few months back of that every faction was going to be like playing a new game, in that they're just so wildly different from one another.
Yeah, I can't think of. Maybe it's I just haven't noticed it this much, but thinking about factions across, say, like Attila, I can't think that any of them have different, really radically different unit movement speeds. Obviously, with the fatigue system, your units will slow down over time.
Right.
I'm desperately trying to think, is there a really slow-moving faction? No. If in Attila, everything's kind of about the Hunnic hordes and the cavalry moving quickly. Everything's quite responsive and reactionary, so it's gonna be, because there's such creative artillery pieces as well, and goblin doom divers and things like that. You don't want to be sat still, yet. For the dwarves, that is almost their staple unit. They are the defensive warriors. Was it is it the Iron Drakes with the beard armor as well?
Yes, Iron Drakes and Iron Breakers. Yep.
Yeah, they've got plating in their beards to stop them burning because they're firing flamethrowers and things like that. But yeah, they're not going to move quickly.
No, they're not. But they're going to have to. The dwarves in particular, I'm really looking forward to about how close they are to their tabletop counterparts, and that it seems like for dwarves, I'm honestly beginning to believe their most important unit is going to be those gyrocopters to go get those enemy war machines and get them to quit firing. That way, the dwarves can focus on just hammering the enemy army.
The gyros are a lot of fun every time I play them. Although I don't know if this is just because it's early code, alpha code, or whether they need to put the actual animations in and stuff like that. But I found it was huge fun playing the demo at EGX and at CA Studios when I was able to visit, to actually tell the gyrocopters to go into melee. Because they just drop down out of the sky and just mow through troops with their propellers, and it just looked hilarious. Whether that's intended or not, that was just...
It should be. They're quite infamous. They're not. It's like in tabletop, you really don't want to commit them to melee unless you have no other choice. But if you have to, they can do it if they need to.
Yeah, because I was being actually shot down by some of the goblin missile troops because they were just bombarding my gyros. And I was like, I don't want to lose these guys, so let's go in and melee them, so we'll stop them being able to hit us with missiles. I just tore them apart, just shredded them with the propellers. Really satisfying.
Yeah. So speaking of gyrocopters, so flyers. That's a whole can of worms of just something that completely messes with every formula that's ever existed in a Total War game prior.
Yeah, it's especially because you've almost kind of got if there's another flyer on the battlefield, you've got to deal with them almost first to gain kind of the supremacy, and then you go. You mix into the land battles, which are, they're pretty staple. We know that, spear beats cav, sword beats spear, axe beats, armor, and things like that. And then you got suddenly a wyvern come crashing through the line and just killing things.
Yeah, I know for me personally, like, the thought of, like, okay, so, playing Shogun 2, whenever I play a large cav army, there'd always be that Ashigura, spear wall. It's like, okay, now I've got to figure out a way to punch a hole through this so I can get around his army, or catch him out of position, which was pretty hard to do. But on this, it's like, okay, my boar boys need an opening. I'm just going to smash my wyvern through this spear unit right here and give him an opening.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I really can't wait to try out some flying units. I mean, they're going to be great for just watching them, and machinima-wise and things like that. Cinematics is going to be great, seeing how they interact and come swooping on in. I mean, it's almost like we've gained, another whole battle type, almost kind of sort of flying aerial combat within land battles. But the fact that you've got that interaction within land battles themselves just makes it loads more fun, because you're not just it's not just separate like aerial battle that you'd go into, it's part of the land battle as well. So it's going to be seeing in the Battle of Blackfire Pass gameplay video that they did ages back now. It was interesting to see the Empire troops like move their muskets up and try and shoot the wyvern as it came in, and it's going to be interesting to see how the targeting for units reacts to flying units. So I guess you are going to have to probably set aside some of units just to try and hold the land battle that's going on, if you're pretty even, and just try and get rid of that aerial menace that could be crashing into your lines at any moment.
Yeah, I know. Personally, for me, being dwarves being my favorite of the 4 factions or 5 factions that we have so far, I can't help but wonder. It's like, am I going to be able to aim my cannons up at these things, or am I just going to have to find other ways to deal with them? Or
I really hope that they have first-person mode on the cannons again, because then you probably could just move them, aim up a little bit, and try and shoot a wyvern out the sky.
Right. Well, I mean, so far the first-person thing has looked pretty fun. I mean, gyrocopters are pilotable, which I thought was hilarious. But also really fun. The Doom Divers, I mean, that's, of course, been a talking point since the very first video they released, which aiming a goblin on a Doom Diver sounds like way too much fun.
That's going to be, just crazy fun.
There needs to be a Steam achievement system for, like, hitting Karl Franz in the air with a Doom Diver or something.
One shot.
Yep. And we've also got a couple of what I believe are unique rules to Total War. Things like for the Chaos roster, we have Warhounds that have poisoned attacks, or you've got, if you play Greenskins, all goblins come with the expendable rule, which reflects from tabletop of when they break or they have morale negative effects on those around them. It doesn't affect orcs, because orcs don't care, because goblins are too small and weedy and panic at the smallest thing. Do these have any cousins in earlier games, or are these totally new? Any thoughts on them?
I'm trying to think. Was there a poison type unit before? Something had like a. I'm trying to think if there's anything in the one of the Americas packs or something like that, like poison darts or something like that, like blowpipe warriors. I think might have been. Well, I mean, we've had beehive onagers in Rome 2 as part of the Beasts of War. Oh, and you had scorpions and snake pot onagers as well. So they kind of added in like I guess an area effect cloud damage effect that over time would weaken your troops in that area.
That's interesting.
But no, I don't think anything kind of as just not obvious, but as just in your face as a a poison attack or something like that. Something as almost as physical as and simple as so it's a poison stat effect. You kind of got condition damage coming into Total War now.
Right. It'll be interesting to see if poison works like it does in tabletop, which it's primarily a method that allows lower strength units to just murder things that don't have high armor. Poison is the bane of giants. Very many Orc and Goblin players are very upset with most of the Lizardmen community because we have poison everywhere. They really don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
So of the various types of things that we've kind of talked about, being monsters, flyers, some of these new unit mechanics, is there any one you're more excited for than the others? Or maybe a better question would be, is there any that you think will have a bigger change on the way the game is played or enjoyed, especially for like multiplayer?
I think probably from that perspective, probably flyers and monsters, just how they'll change things up, and especially from a multiplayer perspective, because you've got a totally different health system as well with Total Warhammer.
Right.
So I think all of that together is definitely going to make multiplayer interesting. I'm kind of a bit disappointed that so far, and it doesn't seem in the interviews that I've had with them or watched that I don't think they're looking to add in any kind of different modes, or not looking to bring back like an Avatar Conquest system like they had for Shogun 2, which I actually thought was quite a good innovation for the series for multiplayer. I think maybe that's potentially due to the fact that at the moment, multiplayer wise, Total War Arena is their star child for all things multiplayer Total War related. But I think even with no new modes, this is going to make Total War multiplayer quite different in Warhammer, just because how do you tackle the large monstrous creatures, and if someone brings Deathclaw, how do you deal with that with a multiplayer army setup? Because obviously on the campaign map you can normally see if there's going to be a monstrous creature. You can check out their armies beforehand. You can see Karl Franz riding on Deathclaw down the campaign map or whatever towards you, so you can kind of be like, right, I need my army with my anti-flyer stuff in. It's going to be an interesting challenge. I think there could be quite an interesting multiplayer scene developed out of it. It would be interesting to see if maybe you even had, I mean, this would be something I'd love to do, but almost have like monster battles as a kind of rule set for Total War Warhammer as online battles. So you're only allowed to choose, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 monsters, and then you just duke it out with the monster units and see how they battle it out. So like monster battle royale.
That would be way too much fun.
Might shotgun that idea, other YouTubers watching.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be really enjoyable. Reminds me of good old just Hero Hammer from tabletop, where we just throw characters at each other and see who wins. Yeah. Speaking of some of the new things to deal with monsters, are especially since you got to play as the dwarves for the Battle of Thundery Falls, which I'm super jealous, by the way. How do you like the new war machines we're getting to see? Things like the organ guns, the high damage flame cannons that probably, if I recall right, can do some morale damage, the crazy Doomdagger catapults, Hellblaster volley guns, all that stuff, as opposed to just, a catapult or a cannon that we would see in most armies.
Yeah, organ guns were a lot of fun. Going first person with them. Actually, I remember saying, earlier I was saying I wasn't sure if you could go first person. I've gone first person with them. I've shot the Ragnarok with an organ gun in first person mode. That's really satisfying. And with the organ gun though, there was a bit of a delay when you actually hit fire, and then you've got that kind of volley of 3 shots going in. So that made it quite interesting for when you're lining up your shots with that. But yeah, it's kind of everything's. I guess players that have just played historical Total Wars and they're kind of like looking at Warhammer going, what the hell is everything's almost over the top and overemphasized, but with great dramatic effects. As you were saying, like with the flame cannons, the morale drop, plus the sheer amount of damage that thing does is just crazy. I really want to get into a game and try out a steam tank.
Right.
That'd be good fun.
Steam tanks, they look as crazy as they should be. I'm wondering if their melee capabilities will be as good as they are tabletop.
Just ramming on in.
It's basically a really big lawnmower, essentially.
Nice. Yeah, again, there's that other dynamic. You've got monsters, you've got machines. Whereas in the past we'd probably just say artillery pieces, but no, these are proper machines that you're now interacting with. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Another kind of interesting one to see how that dynamic changes the way you play.
Right, and it's amusing. It's probably going to be really funny to watch people having to adjust to war machines, especially showing up more often in the multiplayer setting. Because in my experience playing Total War in multiplayer and watching a lot of videos on YouTube, it doesn't seem like war machines are a very popular pick for many armies. But that's definitely going to probably be changing with this iteration, especially for the dwarves who are going to need it
yeah.
to handle things. When they see that Ragnarok spider, it's like, okay, we're going to aim everything we got at that thing. See if we can take it down. So it's going to be really curious to watch how people adjust to that. But the war machines seem like they also have many different levels of defense because, I'm... at least from what I watched of the Battle of Thundering Falls, the dwarves actually have range units that can defend themselves in melee. I mean, we were seeing things like War Machine crews and Iron Drakes just beating the tar out of those Spider Riders. Despite the fact that in most Total War armies, if your range unit got set upon by cavalry, they would get absolutely torn apart.
Yeah, I think again it's kind of just set up that even if you you probably for the most part, unless you've got something so solid to hammer on through dwarven units, even the units that would traditionally be exposed weaker units like missile troops, they can still hold their own in the melee. And once they get knocked, because you're kind of essentially almost just knocking them over rather than doing any kind of real damage to them because they're so heavily armored and they're so weighty.
And their morale is just super high, so it's hard to just break them by charging them.
Yeah, it could be. I almost wonder if more of them will if some of them will have will be quite like to see lots of kind of almost unbreakable traits to them, or I guess maybe like last stand type morale sort of system, similar like you did in Medieval 2, where you had if you completely surrounded a unit, they would fight to the death rather than just rout because they had no way out, so they'd almost go into a frenzy, and they'd get some extra kills sometimes through that.
Well, that would certainly be a very dwarven approach. Because we know the Slayers are unbreakable, which of course is a nice touch, seeing as you're supposed to throw them at fear and terror causers.
Yep.
And they're going to take a lot of damage. But it'll also be interesting to see how regular units handle that, or if we'll have potential upgrades for Dwarf Lords like Oathstones, which in tabletop are basically a rock that they throw on the ground. They say, I'm going to stand right here or I'm going to die trying. And they don't move. Yeah. They just stand there until they die.
That sounds very... Yeah, I mean, from all the stuff we've heard, I mean, the Thorgrim Grudgebearer trailer and the Book of Grudges, and the dwarves won't stand for anything else. They'll strike them all off as long as it takes them. It does sound like a very dwarven thing to do. Just throw a stone down. It's like, I will not move from here until I've killed everything, or die trying, sort of thing.
So, speaking of Thorgrim, how was it getting to use him for the Battle of the Thundering Falls and having one of those, getting to play a little bit with one of those extremely fun and powerful legendary lords?
Yeah, it was good. It was kind of almost a little... I mean, there are kind of comedic elements to Warhammer, and it was quite funny watching his chair bearers just kind of waddle about with his chair, almost swaying from side to side as they marched on forward. He's it's not like he's happily just sitting there on his chair. And I mean, one of his abilities was his ring. I can't remember the specific name for it, but it let out a flaming fireball shot blast, basically. And it was really fun launching that either into a Ragnarok or into groups of enemies, and just seeing him sort of just move his little arm forward and just shoot this blast forward of the fireball there.
Right. Oh yeah, the fiery ring of Thori. Yeah. I was super amused to see that in some of the videos that they showed, especially I think in the one that Total War officially released. He just kept spamming it on the Ragnarok, trying to kill the cursed thing.
Yeah.
And Thorgrim, from what I've seen of him, definitely seems to come off as one of those characters that, although he's really powerful in melee and although he's really tough, he's much more of your morale leader. Of that, you can put him in the center of your army and he will just hold that line, as opposed to from what it looks like for Ungrim seems like he's going to be very much like his tabletop iteration, where you find the biggest thing on the field, you just throw Ungrim right at it.
Yeah,
and he'll just chop it into bits.
Yeah, I certainly wanted to try and keep Thorgrim back a little bit when I could. I mean, he's got a healing potion as well, so if he did kind of get stuck in there, then you could probably pull him back. But no, it was really good fun getting to use him. But kind of all the time I get a chance to play it, I just want to play more. And kind of move on to like the next thing as well, because I'm kind of itching to. I know it's probably kind of bad to say, because I'm sure there's some people that would just give anything just to play. I'm sure yourself included, to play Ambush at Thundering Falls just once. I'm kind of like, right, I've played Ambush like 5 or 6 times now. What's next? Come on, let me see the next bit. I want to get stuck in, because I am really trying to contain my hype for Warhammer, because there's no doubt things were learnt from Rome 2 and subsequent releases and things like that.
The internet is certainly being as cautious as it can be about this.
I mean, with Rome 2, I got so stupidly excited and hyped with it that I got swept up with it, and I almost kind of paid the price of that, because a lot of people are like, why didn't you mention there were issues and stuff? I didn't even see them. I mean, with Rome 2, it's kind of a bit of a different case. I only ever played the prologue campaign, so I didn't get to play the campaign map. So I didn't get to kind of see all these issues, and it kind of makes sense that I was only ever allowed to play the prologue campaign, because it was kind of the more polished, scripted side of things. But, all that aside, part of that was that I was so hyped and so excited. I'd be oblivious. The blinkers were on. I was just going, oh my god, Rome 2, it looks fantastic. I'm having such fun. I'm completely oblivious to any potential faults or issues. So kind of this time with Warhammer, as much as I'm going, yeah, I want to play the next thing, I constantly try to like rein myself in and go like, hang on a minute, just calm. I'm sure it'll be great, but let's kind of look at the wider angle here and see if there's any potential things that we should be kind of flagging up early on.
Right, and it's there's so much new stuff in this game. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be spending a lot of time on release, just going through trying to find any, all the little, because I am hoping for a bug-free release, but I don't know if that's the most practical thing with games this sophisticated in the modern age.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I might say that's happily hopeful.
Oh yeah.
To take that. I think there'll be some bugs. I mean, in my kind of the last couple of minutes of my analysis of the campaign map, I kind of almost said it's great seeing all this content and getting to see more and more of it all the time, but ultimately for me, if it doesn't run well, it kind of makes all the content pointless, because you just can't appreciate it if you can't even, get stuck in properly. So I just really hope that at launch, as much as possible, it's bug free, but also that there's been at least some attempt to add in, a bit more optimization, some extra kind of options there. I'm hoping, it's also made some, performance increases, and it's showing from the campaign, it looks like they're showing us all new kind of graphical fidelity levels for the campaign map, especially. I mean, it looks beautiful.
Oh yeah, and plus it changes. I mean,
yeah.
oh my goodness.
I just hope that scales back down into a performance experience that is, accessible for the majority, rather than just those that have been to NASA and stolen one of their supercomputers.
All right. Well, we'll hope. We'll find out in April and see how that goes. But that being said, they've done a really good job of being really communicative with this title.
Yeah, they've certainly been very open. There's been a few things they could have probably been more open about, and it would have helped to have some things communicated earlier than they did. But especially with like the labeling of their trailers and things like that, they have set up on the wiki of what's cinematic, what does that mean, what's in engine mean. It really does look like they are trying very hard to put in a lot of interaction and discussion with the community before the game comes out.
Right, because the last thing anybody wants is a redo of the Siege of Carthage and then Rome 2.
yeah. I mean, Siege of Carthage, I've seen that thrown around over the last kind of week since the campaign map one.
Oh, yeah.
Just sort of everyone saying, just remember Siege of Carthage. And again, I remember seeing Siege of Carthage and thinking, oh my god, this is going to be amazing. And then we actually got to play the Siege of Carthage, and it was, what happened to, like, the other 70% of the city and the scale of it all? It's just not there. I'm kind of like, from what we've seen so far, I can't see any kind of scenario that's similar to that, because the campaign map, from what it looks like, is probably most likely what it looks like. I can't really see that changing.
Yeah, well, it seems like they've been doing a good job of, when they get the cinematic footage, it's more about telling a story and just being like, look at all this crazy new stuff that's coming, rather than being like, look at this absurdly gigantic PC breaking thing that looks so much fun to play, but is not really a realistic thing we can accomplish. But I have high hopes for that. But so speaking of that campaign map, I gotta say I was super excited when they released the video the other day showing us just the fact that it changes alone caught me very off guard. In a great way. I wasn't expecting being able to take over a dwarf hold as an orc and just orcify the living what out of it.
Yeah.
And just have all sorts of knock down statues and put orc images everywhere, and the horrible building construction plans that greenskins like to use for things. And also when they released the blog about the corruption, just seeing what chaos will do to the world as they move south.
Because it's not just about the the terrain tile doesn't just change color, sort of thing. It sharp spikes start spawning out of everywhere, and you get lava and all sorts of horrible looking things.
Like, it looks like the world is turning into a living hellscape.
Yeah. And if there's other features which affect it that dynamically, I'm gonna be very, very excited for that, because as I'd probably say, I spent a lot of time on the campaign map, so
yeah, I can say that you do.
Sometimes even more than battles, to be honest. It's funny, sometimes, despite Total War probably being most iconic for its battle system, I sometimes find myself going, oh god, I just want a whole part of an episode of a Let's Play that I'm recording just be on the campaign map. The focus that I can do of managing my economy, building new buildings, raising more armies and upgrades and technology and diplomacy and things like that, it's almost, to me, sometimes more interesting than the battles themselves.
Yeah, well, and especially since now you got things going on the map, like the storms of magic that'll sprout into being, and all of a sudden all of your mages are going to be super powerful, or just a lot of the settlements and buildings just look crazy interesting, and there's so much detail. I mean, just the pillar of bone was like, oh my goodness. I was
say the same thing, yeah. That looked insane. And you've got the wisps of the winds of magic everywhere.
Yeah, and so much of it is pretty in different ways. I mean, the Marshes of Madness compared to the difference of Athel Loren we see in Bretonia, all the way to the crazy, snow and lava dichotomy going on up in Norska. But I really like that. It seems like it's going to add a really ominous element to when those vampire counts come for you or chaos comes for you, and they're literally killing and warping the land around them as they march towards your empire. Like, I imagine that when if you're playing Dwarves or the Empire and Archaon's hordes are coming down from the north and you just see everything getting turned to horribleness behind him, that's going to be pretty scary when it's heading for your cities.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So mentioned wizards. So magic, really crazy mechanic. We haven't gotten to see a whole bunch of it, but from the little that we have seen, we've shown a lot of the big spells. We've seen Comet for the Karl Franz videos, and the orcs, of course, have been fond of. I believe in the Thundering Falls, they have a goblin shaman who uses Curse of the Bad Moon a lot, if I remember right. Which is certainly a very graphically interesting spell.
Yeah, the huge moon, and they're just randomly wandering across the battlefield wherever it wants. Quite an interesting vortex to see.
Yeah, I'm glad they kept in the random element from magical vortexes. It's going to be very fitting when fighting orcs and goblins to watch their spell backfire and come back in on them. If they're not careful. And then we've got stuff like in the Karl Franz trailer, they show the Foot of Gork just one-shotting a poor steam tank. I'm guessing. So, like Magic, think it's really fun, interesting. Not really interested in it. Any thoughts?
Magic side of things. I kind of just
here.
want to see more spells and how it'll interact a bit more. I'm kind of wondering. I would love to hear what you think, because we've kind of seen little bits of Magic through the teasers. But I mean, do you feel that there's a faction reveal? I mean, obviously you've got the vampire counts, but do you think that they perhaps potentially focus on a bit more Magic to kind of show off how it'll work with the vampire counts? Or do you think
I think the vampire counts are going to be the biggest reveal for Magic, just because it's so intrinsic to their faction. In that, on tabletop, for instance, you don't have to have a wizard for every army, with the exception of the undead. They have to have a wizard, because it's the only way they can sustain their army. And of course, the undead, based on, I spent a lot of time looking at the video with Azhag, being the campaign video, because there's if you pause fast enough, you can read all the little snippets about what his spells from the Lord of Death do. And not only do they look crazy fun, but they're really close to their tabletop iterations. So I feel really good about especially like the lore of the vampire counts being. It's going to be interesting to see the summoning feature. In that, to what extent will I be able to summon undead? I mean, is it just going to be like, okay, I'm just going to cast a spell and pop a new unit of zombies up here because I feel like it, or is it going to be that I can only regrow my own units, or can I raise up the enemy's dead? Stuff like that. But I think the vampire counts will definitely be the most Magic-heavy focus in seeing, okay, what to the extent, what can I do? My only misgiving about what they've showed us so far is that, and I know it's for flashy effect, but they've only showed us some really big spells, when I would like to see a lot more of the minor spells. Like I saw that Azhag has a spell called Aspect of the Dread Knight, which allows him to... he casts it on a unit, and they get a small morale buff, but they do a huge morale debuff to anyone engaged with them, which could just be devastating against a lot of opponents if used at the right time. But because I know, although I'm a fan of the big flashy spells, I think for me personally, when fighting especially human opponents, I would be much more comfortable relying on a lot of death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing, of just buffing my units where they need to be, to give them that little edge to take advantage of a flank or something. But yeah, I'm super excited for the Vampire Counts trailer, and I know someone else who is.
I think I know who you mean, right?
It's hopefully we get a really nice magic reveal for that.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering just on the way you said with like raising kind of units with them and raising the undead, whether that might be potentially like a stance or something you could go into.
That seems quite likely. Of maybe when your army takes damage, that I actually hadn't thought of that. That could be very much a good solution for them. Is you know, maybe you're low on numbers and you want to generate some zombie units or attract some interesting undead, so you just set that stance and wait and let your necromancer start raising the dead in the area and draw it onto them.
Potentially, kind of from that, do you maybe need to spread more corruption first? Do you need like a certain percentage of corruption in the province before you can start raising undead?
Yeah,
through it potentially.
It's interesting that it's the armies that seem capable of spreading it as well. Looking at the video, when you see the Vampire Count faction, finally we get to see them just killing Bretonia around them. I mean, everything's dying.
Just destroying it. The trees are just,
And it was interesting to see those weren't agents. Those were actually generals. Because they got a little army meter next to them.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, I'm guessing it's just everywhere the vampire counts go, just everything dies around them, which is certainly fitting. But I thought that would be more of like a, some sort of agent action you'd have to deal with, as opposed to being something that is just intrinsic to their nature. And definitely, I would imagine the more corrupted an area is, probably the easier time they have recruiting, or maybe it gets cheaper or faster or something for them to recruit, especially with the way that the resource system seems to have been streamlined a bit, especially with the loot. Man, the loot system is crazy. I know it's going to be interesting to see how that works with all of the different armies. But, vampire counts, they are being very hush-hush about everything that they can, it seems, the vampire counts.
Do you think there's a certain reason why? I mean, like, going into this, I thought, I didn't think it would be the vampire counts that we'd be kind of waiting for last. And I mean, they're starting to release, they really are making it so they're going to release loads of information about all the other factions, because they're starting to do army rosters and things like that for the other factions. And still nothing at all, not even like a teaser for the vampire counts. Do you think there's a specific reason why?
I don't know if it's just hype, like that they're trying to build, or if there's something so big and important about it that they're being really quiet. I'm guessing because of all the factions in the game, the vampire counts are the most bizarre, as far as a faction that has some, like, I know I've been going back and forth with a lot of people about the many different ways they could do things. In that you've got an entire faction that's unbreakable. You've got an entire faction that, is immune to psychology, never flees, can't rout, is really reliant on their characters to keep them alive, and is super magically heavy. I mean, they are so out of left field compared to everything Total War players have ever been used to. I'm guessing that's why they're holding them off so long.
Yeah.
Is maybe to sort of give everyone baby steps into how weird this game's going to be for people who've only played historical titles. I mean, I'm sitting here as a Warhammer fan being like, oh, this is exactly like tabletop. It's just everything moves and it's really pretty.
Yeah.
I can just imagine, someone who's only played Shogun 2 or Attila, and they're coming in, they're like, okay, I've got flying units, and I've got this weird unit that army that only works on aggression, but then I've got this other army that has no cavalry. Like, how are they supposed to defend their flanks? Oh, okay, they've got super powerful war machines. I don't know if it would be, like, I guess too much for them to handle to just be like, here's undead.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, though, because obviously it's going into a total war kind of scenario. That there is elements of balancing that they've got to try and put in. But how do you balance the undead that are unroutable, unbreakable?
Yeah, and then we got ethereal units to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it means you're going to get some very squishy but large units to start with. Sort of like very. I mean, would they like skeletal warriors or something like that aren't particularly that powerful, but there's lots of them, and you can try and just mob
Zombies.
rush them.
Lots and lots of zombies.
But then as you go up, the ethereal units and things like that become stronger and stronger. So that really presents a challenge. But I don't know if that's countered by you need a certain level of corruption to recruit the highest level
I
troops
imagine,
or something like that.
I imagine it'll also be based on your character level. I think the best way to balance it would be because characters are so intrinsic, and from a lore perspective, a vampire count army is literally just a necromancer, and everything else is just an extension of his will. And so he's the centerpiece of that army. So if they were to follow that, then there might be a really interesting technology tree for them that relies primarily on opening up new sorceries and making your casters more powerful, or maybe giving them access to new kinds of corpses or whatever sort of messed up stuff you want to call it, and unlocking things like the Terrorgeist and the Zombie Dragon. Well, the Zombie Dragon's a mount option, but there's so many ways they could go with it. So many ways, especially since vampire counts. Just looking at the roster on tabletop, I also expect they're going to be the flying dominant faction, because they have a bunch of flyers. I mean, a bunch. But they have no shooting. Is their counter. Vampire counts have 0 shooting. The only thing they have that's remotely close are banshees that scream at people, but it's very short ranged.
Yeah.
Despite the fact it's very devastating.
Melee and flyers then for them.
Yeah, it's all about that magic, and it's all about that melee.
Yep.
And it's going to be. I hope it's grotesque, though. I mean, Chaos has been very gross looking so far, which I completely applaud and approve of. Those Chaos trolls look super nasty. But man, I hope the undead are just wretch worthy. Those zombies need to be ugly.
Bits of them falling off.
Yeah. Let's see. So we kind of talked a little bit about this earlier. Are you a big fan of the fact that we've got? Are you a fan of the idea that now, instead of picking like a faction to determine your single player campaign, that you pick a person to lead it? You have these immortal legendary lords who you pick, and that's your single player campaign is revolving around this person's story and building up the faction around them, as opposed to just being like, okay, I'm going to play the Empire. You just that's it. You got the Empire. Or do you prefer this new system of, okay, instead of just playing the Empire, I'm going to play a different aspect of it by taking Balthazar Gelt if I want a more sneaky, conniving, magical approach, or do I want the really noble ruler approach where I'm going to pick my racial leader being Karl Franz?
I think I will, if it really does offer enough diversity to the gameplay between kind of those different factions, because obviously you'll have your different legendary lord and you'll invest a lot of time into their personal quests and their skill trees and things like that. But if the rest of the experience is pretty similar behind that, then I'm not sure. I'm obviously choosing which legendary lord, and that will have various impacts on how you want to play, but I think those need to be quite significant impacts on how the race as a whole actually functions. I think in a way it would be nice or interesting to see if there were almost kind of exclusive units that could only be recruited if you chose one particular legendary lord.
I know, looking from the dwarf info we just got this morning, that if you take Ungrim, apparently you get access to cheaper and much larger Slayer blocks. So Slayers are gonna be a mainstay of your armies, because you have easier access to them, they're cheaper, and they're much bigger than you'll get with Thorgrim. But if you take Thorgrim, I believe it's Dwarf Warriors, or I can't remember if they meant Dwarf Warriors as in the unit, or Dwarf Warriors as in Warriors of the Dwarves. Wording. CA. And that those will be then cheaper, and he gathers dwarves to him the more he accomplishes. And it seems that he builds up, I wouldn't say he builds up momentum like the Greenskins do as far as generating just an army out of nowhere, but it seems like he generates the ability to get cheaper units faster that are still just as effective by the more grudges he strikes out, as he invigorates the dwarven race to bigger and better acts. So yeah, I agree with that a lot. Though for those who are watching that weren't aware of this, at the very least, when you get far enough in your campaign, you do eventually unlock the other legendary lord to play with. As we saw in the big map reveal, you see the guy has control of both Azhag and Grimgor Ironhide.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, but I just hope there's enough kind of different dynamic events or ways that shape your experience before you get access to other legendary lore. I think if that's the case, then it will be a delight to have that as the way. You don't play as a faction, you play, because they're trying to bring in loads more role-playing elements to it right now, and they're really trying to get you invested in a way that we've never seen before in your characters, not just your legendary lords, but your heroes as well, and the fact that you can, not only build up quite extensive skills trees with all of them, but you can then pop those agents in to your armies and they take up a slot, a unit slot in there, and they can fight. And that's that. Yeah, I want to put a beep noise on because
dude, you can say what you want. I don't even know why I've been bothering to censor myself.
Quite frankly, I don't normally swear to make a point, but that's fucking awesome to put because your agents, like, especially when you've got things like like witch hunters and things like that, and it makes sense that they'd be an actual physically represented unit on the battlefield, and you'd want to attach them to your army, not just because they've got good support buffs, but they've got good offensive ones as well, and you want to, they've got a really cool special, bodyguard unit or something like that they go into battle with, and they're unique with that. And it also means that when you're fighting a battle with them, if this is your lord agent or whatever that you've leveled up, you're going to want to bloody look after this guy because he's leveled 17, and you've spent a lot of time getting his skills up and giving him some good gear, and you don't want him to die. So in that sense, like the role-playing element, I'm so happy to see all those improvements because that makes you invested so much more, and it makes you care so much more about what you're doing and the decisions you're making and the battles you're fighting or not fighting and the outcomes of those.
Oh, yep, I agree very, very much. I know I am going to, I'm pretty sure I'm going with dwarves on my first run, but if somebody kills one of my master engineers or one of my thanes or something, hell hath no fury, man. It will be an ugly storm of retribution for whatever faction takes down a character of mine. That will not be forgiven lightly. Because it looks like, the characters are just so fascinating. Just seeing just the Empire alone, just the trailer of the Thundering Falls, getting to see the Warrior Priest in action and the Witch Hunter. Obviously, they didn't show us a bunch about them, but just, you see them run into battle, and both of them have those not huge, but pretty noticeable area of effect hits, as they swing and send people flying around them. And obviously, the wizards are an obvious pick, but I'm excited personally for the dwarf master engineer. I can't wait to see how he's going to augment the war machines in your army to make them just that much better. Whether it's by increasing their damage or goodness knows what. And it looks like the agents are pretty busy too. I was watching the Azhag video, and if you pause when he's hovering over the orc shaman, you see all of his potential actions. And that guy could suck the magic out of the air, which I thought was a really cool mechanic. He could assassinate. He could scout to join your army. Oh goodness, there were two other things he could do, but he was very busy compared to when I play, Shogun 2. If I want to do and he could sabotage as well, but it's if I wanted to sabotage or assassinate, I had to get a ninja or a shinobi or whatever. If I wanted to mess with people's armies by impacting their morale, I had to invest in this, priest class, and I had to get a very specific character for every action. Whereas it seems that with Total War Warhammer, especially since some of the factions seem a little lacking, at least at release, with their options, like the dwarves only have 2 agents, which I think is just enough to do what they need them to do. But it's these agents, they have some very far-reaching abilities, which of course just means customization. Lots and lots of customization. I don't think anyone's going to struggle to have their own character, especially with the equipment rules now. Of what characters can wear, like 6 items.
Yeah, I almost kind of, and it's not something I would be totally against. I actually be interested to see if CA did DLCs where they add more loot into the game and more gear for you to customize your characters further. I know there's always you know, a lot of talk about sort of saying, oh, that, you know, they'll whore out as much as possible out of it, and, you know, and a lot of people say, oh, Games Workshop will make sure they get their money as well out of it and things like that. But actually, kind of extra gear and stuff like that is something that I'd actually be quite, because it's kind of stuff like that you didn't have to pay for it, but it was added in with the expansions for the Dawn of War 2 games. You got extra loot added in with the expansions and things.
Right.
So actually, if it's a reasonable, if it's like a $2.99 or $3.99 pack, I'd probably quite happily play if it's got, you know, like 20 new items or gear that adds different effects and things like that, and potentially slightly different kind of, I don't know, some of them have kind of similar to Thorgrim's Ring, where it has like a fireball spell from it.
Oh yeah.
Well, it'd be kind of cool if they added a few things like that.
Yeah, and they definitely got a huge pool to pull from. I mean, I think I have yet to see a magic item that doesn't exist on tabletop yet, but I really hope they take the reins and run with it, of inventing their own magic items that are really fun and exciting. Yeah. That being said, it's great to see that if I have, you know, an orc war boss, that it's not just an orc war boss. I can give him, you know, the axe or the chop of the last Wa, you know, to make him all that more awesome, or, you know, some extra defense with the armor of Gork or whatever. I'm hoping the dwarves get their runic system for runic items, but I guess we'll have to wait more to see that. It's kind of sad to see that runesmiths are not a playable agent yet, but I guess they're saving that for the Karak Azul DLC. Because Karak Azul is a faction on the map, but they're not playable yet, as their big guy is a rune lord with an anvil of doom, which, oh man, I cannot wait to have an anvil of doom. So getting towards the end of this, this is a pretty open-ended question, and if you don't think you can think of a specific answer, that's all good. Are you able to narrow it down to something you're most excited for and most worried about?
Okay, most excited for, I think probably just the fantasy setting in itself, because the biggest, not complaints, but kind of constructive criticism that I wanted to give CA and just kind of openly state when I did my kind of review of Attila was that they've kind of, with the historical titles, they've kind of got to this safe, happy place where they've got the formula down. They know how to make a historical game. They've got that pretty much sorted. But I really want to see them push themselves and really go for, you know, creating features and functions and that really, you know, take the gloves off, as it were, and just allow them to go as creative and as nuts as possible with it, and just see if out of that craziness become some really great features and functions from it, which then can be fed back into the historical games at some point to kind of revitalize them a little bit. Not that there's anything wrong with the current kind of pattern, but it's been the same since almost the original Total War. You know, the first one's released. You know, you've got the real-time battles and you've got the campaign map at the core. Sure, there's been more options added, in some cases options removed, strangely, but you know, it's never dynamically changed as much. And okay, settings often do that, but just fantasy in general, you've got magic, you've got flying things, you've got undead things, you've got bloody everything. So I just think just fantasy in general is the best thing I'm looking forward to, just seeing relative creative freedom within what the IP allows, but just to see something different. Because we really haven't seen, I don't think we have seen a Warhammer game that is going to represent
the IP no.
like this before, in this scale, in this manner. So I'm really excited to see how that just presents itself and what comes out of Total War Warhammer. The thing I'm most concerned with is, again, kind of just going back to just performance, because again, that hasn't really dramatically changed over the last couple of titles, and in fact sometimes it's got worse. DirectX 12 certainly isn't the solution. It's not a magical solution. There isn't just a magical technology that will instantly, some people say, oh, they need a 64-bit engine as well in DirectX 12. None of those things, I think are going to dramatically just suddenly make the game run at 300 FPS. It's just not the way it's ever gonna happen because of the scale, because of the type of game it is. But I would just love that there to be a reasonable improvement to multi-core support, to I really will be kind of disappointed if DirectX 12 isn't supported, just because it is, it's not coming out to April. They've got plenty of time to work on that and implement that for systems that can support it. And I mean, 64-bit, I guess it depends how much work that would be in redoing the engine. I remember from various mod reports and summits that I've been to or witnessed videos from, they've gone on record saying that that a new engine would be wonderful. Yeah, obviously, if most developers in that situation would be like, yeah, a new engine is great. We get to work with something from the ground up. But to actually create that new engine takes years and years and years and costs a lot of money. At the same time, they're not producing any new content. So I can totally understand that side of things. And that we won't ever see just a brand new engine thrown out. The engine they have at the moment, which many people call the Warscape engine, is actually called the TW3 engine, and it's a very modular engine, and Warscape is the graphics module of that engine. So Warscape handles the graphics of things. So actually, if you like the graphics of current Total War games, don't say that you want the Warscape engine gone, because that's the graphics side of things. But I would love to see some improvements in this modular engine. It seems like a very smart way of building an engine, having it modular, having it so you can just take little bits out and tweak little bits and upgrade here and there. So eventually it becomes a new engine over the course of several games. But obviously, as you can tell, it's something I'm very passionate about, something I'm very zoned in on. But yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't go as far as to say that point blank about the Chaos DLC, because it is still quite a divisive thing, and I think the way it was announced could have been a lot better. Yeah, it has split the community. Like, they needed that blog post out before they announced it, because that would have at least explained the business practices behind it. I really do feel that sometimes they don't, forward thinking wise, it just like, we've got all the information, but let's release it in the most practical order possible.
Yeah, they definitely need a feels like they need a small pessimist on board, just to protect them.
But as consumers, we're always going to think differently to the business-driven decision-making process that obviously the Chaos DLC was born out of. But I mean, all that aside, my point is that almost at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if there isn't any Chaos, if there isn't any of this, if it doesn't run well at the bare heart of it all, and if it has a bad launch, what's the point? Yeah. So I mean, for me, EA, if you're listening, please, I know I've said this in every video of mine and every video I go on to, but make the performance good, please. Not just on top systems, but medium specs. So I know low-end systems will struggle, with the scale. That's fine, but for us that have more than 2 cores, please recognise that there's more than 2 cores, because it'd be great to really use them. It's a jump that Battlefield made really well. They updated and optimized multi-cores very well with around about Battlefield 3 or 4. They did that fantastically from what they had before. It's never going to be the same because it's a totally different game, but if they can make it solid, then this will be a solid game. And I agree. I will stop now, because I will keep you here all night talking about performance.
Hey man, it's all good with me. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And anyone who's listening to this, just pray to Sotek. Launch day has to be good. It has to be good. I want this game to be as big of a success as it can be, because the bigger the success, the more content, as far as I'm concerned. And I want everything. I want everything.
I mean, from that perspective, if it runs really well, throw all the content you want at me, almost, because it's got a perfect platform that it's running on.
I mean, I am definitely one of those people. I always laugh when someone tries to ask me, how do you feel about DLC? It's like, yeah, when it comes to Warhammer, I am not a fair person to ask that question.
Yeah, I'm gonna want all of it. Yeah,
it's like you could be like, hey, here's a. I don't even want to give an example, just because I'd have to knock on wood. In any event, last question that I can really think of before we just sort of get to the very end part is there any faction that you kind of learned about or heard about that you would be excited to see? I know we've still got 2 more whole games to go, and this game seems to reek of new races being added, with Bretonia looking like they're done. Almost.
Yeah, I mean, well, that would be the faction I'm looking for, Bretonia. I love the French influences into that, and the Arthurian influences into all of that. I studied medieval history at university, and one of the modules we looked at was chivalry and the chivalric values of Arthur and his knights, and so we studied the books and tales of Arthur. So having that embodied in a faction in a Total War game is just awesome.
Oh yeah, well I cannot gracefully describe what I was feeling when I saw Lee and Leonker as they were flying over Bretonia, of just, oh shit, the king is here.
That's my guy.
He's, oh man, getting to see him was such an unexpected surprise. I was expecting Bretonia to be bare bones at best, and instead it looks like they're almost completely fleshed out. I wonder if they're going to be an early DLC or maybe even a free DLC. If it was a free DLC, I think the gaming community would lose its mind. But fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Okay, so is there any questions you have for me, lore-wise, Warhammer Fantasy Tabletop? Maybe not.
Where do we start? Do you have another 3 hours?
Hey, I'm in no rush. You're a busier man than I am. That's probably fact.
I mean, I don't know. I've tried to kind of throw some questions at you while we've been going through, but
yeah, I've definitely noticed that.
I mean, I don't really know actually off the top of my head, but I just think it's a very exciting time to be a Total War fan and a Warhammer fan, or vice versa, or any of it, to be honest, because this is the first time you're seeing such a large-scale fantasy world brought to life at this scale. Well,
and every game, especially the strategy ones that have come out before this, at least in recent years, I know there are many people who have fond feelings of the what was it, the Rise of the Horned Rat or whatever it was. From way back, but I mean, I remember Mark of Chaos coming out, and I was super excited for that game, and it was, man, and I loved it, but you had to be a really hardcore Warhammer fan to love it.
Do you think, okay, I've got a question for you, do you think hardcore Warhammer fans are going to like Total Warhammer?
Yes.
From what you've seen so far?
Oh, yeah. I've been in contact with a lot of the various forums and a lot of the different groups, and for Warhammer fans, this was literally such a gift, because we lost our game. Games Workshop came in and pulled the plug on us very unexpectedly, I might add, and it just, like, the community worldwide was very unified for a long time, and when Age of Sigmar hit us, or the End Times hit us, man. We lost a lot of people. We lost a lot of good people, and it was very ugly, and it still is in some places you go. And Total War, Creative Assembly literally gave us such an opportunity and such a gift that I can't even express. I mean, I know to many people, they say, and they're like, oh, it's just a game. It's like, yeah, this is a game I spent like $10,000 on, collecting models and painting and learning the lore and, reading the books. I mean, I've been into Warhammer since I was like 8, and I'm much, much older than 8 now. And it's just, everything I've seen, the fact that they leave little nuggets of lore for people like me. I go in on the Thorgrim video, and I realized that the Dava's Kron, or the Great Book of Grudges, he was reading actually had legitimate Dwarvish, and I was able to go in and translate it and find out some really cool things. Potentially little hints they were dropping, or the size of the map alone. I mean, I heard about this game and I was like, oh, okay, dwarves, greenskins, that's a pretty small area, so they're going to probably do the Empire in the World of this mountains. I come out and it's like, okay, we're doing the Old World Plus. It's like, are you kidding me? This map is freaking gigantic. And just I'm sitting there looking at it and it's like, you say there's only 4 factions, but there's like 8 on this map. How are you going to make a reasonably sized game out of the other 2 when you've got a map this freaking big? And just everything is so gorgeous and so well made, and they've held true so much to the lore of, just watching the trailers alone. You watch the Karl Franz trailer and it's super hopeful and amped, and it's all about, revitalizing the Empire and being the hope of mankind. Then you watch the Thorgrim video and it's all dour and he's pissed off and just waiting for the greenskins to show up so he can beat the crap out of them and then, strike out a book and a grudge in the Great Book of Grudges. But he's still mad. Like, he gets a great victory and he's still pissed. Not even slightly happy in true dwarvish fashion. And then we get the Chaos video out of left field, I might add. And it's Kolek Suneater, no less. Which, I gotta say, having a monstrous special character right at the get-go, man. I was blown away that they're like, okay, here's a character that's the size of a building. Have fun.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting anywhere near Kolek, or Chaos for that matter. I mean, I knew they were going to be in the game, just based off the little, seeing Chaos in the trailer, and there was a little prophecy that was hidden in Dwarvish in the first trailer that talks about Chaos coming. But, I didn't think they were going to be playable, or much less that we'd get Archaon himself or Kolek Suneater. And then, of course, they released the Greenskin trailer, which, when I heard Grimgor was hitting a trailer, I was like, oh, I really hope this isn't just Grimgor monologuing. Because Grimgor just doesn't monologue. Usually, all of his great speeches are usually people overhearing him muttering to himself because he's really mad. But instead it was this really annoying goblin. And he kills him at the end for talking too much. And I was like, oh my god, this is so perfect. So the amount of respect that they've paid to the lore has just been... Oh my goodness. I mean, I know there are people out there who talk about that Star Wars is their life or Lord of the Rings or something. This is my life. I'm a Warhammer fan through and through at the end of the day. And when I was very little, I always prayed for a Total War Warhammer. When the rumors of that started flying around in like 2007 or whatever it was, the Warhammer community flipped the fuck out. I mean, that's the only word that's appropriate of how bad we freaked out. And then we thought it was just a rumor and that it wasn't true, and we all went on with our lives. And then we lost our game. And, for many people, it was like, well, I guess it's time to sell all my books or burn them. I know way too many people that literally burned their armies and army books. They were just so mad. And it was like, we've lost everything, and there's no point in keeping these anymore, and they're useless toys now and all this stuff. And then I see this, and it's like, nope. Warhammer is not dead. In fact, I will keep this tangent very quick because I could go on for years about it. But all I will say is I don't understand the stupidity of Games Workshop for ending Warhammer Fantasy literally before the biggest game it will ever have is about to come out.
I mean, I don't know much about it, but I can appreciate that's like a dick move.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, it's like, I see it, it's like, Games Workshop, you would have sold so many models, so many books.
Because I would have got back into it.
And they're like, nope, we're going to end the setting. Have fun with the best video game ever, but you're not going to be able to play it on tabletop. It's like, why? What are you doing? Yeah. So, I mean, I've literally been very successful teaching Warhammer lessons to people because it's one of the only ways you can learn now is to find a previous Warhammer player and teach, which... so I've been doing that for a lot of the people from the forums, and there's enough interest in it that I had to set up like a thing where it's like I have to charge people for lessons because I just don't have the physical time to just do it for free anymore because there's so many people that want to play, just because this game, and they learn about the lore and they're like, oh my god, this game's fascinating, I want to play, and Games Workshop's like, yeah, we're just gonna pull the plug. It's like, oh come on. It's like if there was a kid who was paralyzed from the waist down, and instead of having the inspiring story of him regaining it and winning the Olympics, they're like, nah, just take him out back. behind the shed and put a bullet. But sorry, I gotta stop with that rant while I have the chance. But okay, so unless you've got anything else for me, I think we're pretty much good.
Yeah, I think that's it covered for now.
Okay, thank you so much again for coming on and
thanks for having me,
spending some time.
I've learned a lot, and it's great to chat to someone who's so passionate about this.
Oh yeah, yeah. I feel bad for the people that have to deal with me on a daily basis about this stuff. That being said, really love it. I mean, that lore thread I've been maintaining on the Total War forums is like at 182 pages, I think now.
Yeah.
Something crazy. I've certainly been tested my limits about Warhammer lore. But anyway, yeah, thanks again so much. This has been a blast. This is way more fun than I hoped it would be.
Awesome.
So I had a blast. I hope we can do this again, or maybe
definitely
play some Total War, or God knows what sometime. If you ever play Vermintide, let me know.
Will do.
I love smacking rats around. So yeah, thanks again. All right, thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed the video. I know I personally had an absolute ton of fun. Thanks again, Lionheart, so much for coming onto the channel and being willing to talk to me about some Total War Warhammer stuff. I had an absolute blast. I hope we can do it again sometime. It was a ton of fun. For everyone else, more videos coming later this week. Be sure to follow me on social media to know what's coming up in the future. You can hit up either my Facebook or Twitter. And if you really like the channel, would like to support it beyond just watching videos, feel free to visit my Patreon page, and you'll find various incentives for different levels of support. Including cool things like having personal Warhammer lessons, getting to choose, have an influence on what sort of videos come out next, and other kinds of incentives like that. So thanks again, everyone, so much for your support. I appreciate it, and I love you all very much, and I hope you all have a great night.